All right, so it's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah.
For those that are unfamiliar, this is my friend Victor, aka the Acro Machine. Which, if you've never seen this guy in action, it's a pretty fitting name. But I had the pleasure of getting to meet Victor back at Winterfest of this past year, second annual, my first, and was honestly like one of my first experiences with acro. I mean, I had tried it here and there with a group in San Antonio, and it was fun. I had a good time, but you could definitely tell they were trying to pander to younger, newer, green acro, enthusiasts. So
Yeah.
some of the stuff they were doing, I'm like, I want to stand up, and they're like, no, you gotta lay down. I'm like, no, but I want to stand up. So,
Yeah.
so getting to watch you do some even like the high level stuff, the ground based stuff, that just kind of opened my eyes to, wow, this is being on your feet doesn't necessarily mean harder. There's some ridiculous stuff you can do, in that L position, that ground based position. So, we're kind of in a crazy place right now with the world and
I know.
what we're all doing. So, I wanted to talk with you and introduce our audience to you and catch up, man, because it's been, God, 5 or 6 months since then or longer. And just see how, like, I mean, what's going on with you in life, and we'll just have a convo, man. So tell us for those that aren't familiar with you, tell listeners and our viewers about kind of your background with acro and kind of how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, thanks, man. And again, Travis, man, thanks for having me on here. Any opportunity that I can take, especially to reach out and spread the word of acro to the cheer community, because that's where I'm from originally. But yeah, how I got into acro, first, like I said, I'm old school, man. I was cheering back in like the early '90s, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Hollywood, um, right after high school. I started my career in acting. So I've been in, I used to be on a TV show called Sister Sister, and I've done movies like Can't Hardly Wait, and I'm still always working on something, or
Mm-hmm.
ghost writing a lot of stand up comedy for like a lot of comics right now, and I've always kind of wanted I was envious of all my other actor friends that like found their like hobby outside of the entertainment industry, and I really never had one. And then 6 years ago, I was dating this girl, and she was like, would you be interested in trying this acro yoga thing? And that's what they called it at the time. Like, I hate calling it yoga because it's so far from yoga, right?
Sure, sure.
And I was like, yeah, sure. And so we had showed up to the beach one day because that's kind of where everybody jams. And
Mm-hmm.
I was blown away because I was like, oh, this is like stunting, but laying down on your back, right? Like, in my mind, that's how I looked at it.
Easier, right?
Yeah. And there was a few people out there that were, they were standing there doing things that like kind of resembled stunting, right? Because now obviously a lot of stunts are it you know starting in the 2000s, they started melding the worlds of acro and stunt, where before it wasn't a lot of hand to hand.
Right.
Yeah, but then a lot of that kind of started kind of creeping into that world, which is really cool. So I was kind of when I went out there, I saw that, I was kind of familiar with that. But the problem was, is at the time, in order for me to dust off my rust, I needed to like actually work with like cheerleaders who knew what they were doing, like the flyers. So I
Right.
just
Right.
laid on my back. I figured it was be a lot easier. I didn't require spots in order to do it. I already had the hamstring flexibility, and yeah, I picked up relatively fast. And people were like, "Wow, how it takes years for people to get to this level. How is it that you were able to get to this level so fast?" And I'm like, I used to cheer back in the day, so it definitely gave me an advantage over everyone because of my cheerleading background.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So, so, it's funny you mentioned like the hand to hand stuff, because I just have this sitting here that I was like some of our athletes with. But yeah, the first touch that I had kind of gotten wind of there starting to be this crossover was we had some guys that we did staff with back at Florida that started talking about Cirque du Soleil and talking about Le Rev and like some of the acrobatic shows, and that was back in like 2007, 2008, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And that was the only thing I heard of outside of stunting and cheer, 'cause they were always, it just seemed like so different, almost like gymnastics versus cheer. It's like there's some similarities, but they're so different they would never cross over.
yeah,
And I found it interesting. I saw this one thing around that same time where there were some cheerleaders that were getting recruited into Cirque du Soleil, but they were trying to take away the 5, 6, 7, 8 and make it a little bit more artistic. So
yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
when you got into acro and you kind of took to it quickly, what was that transition like, and how did your background in cheer go with the acro, and then kind of full circle, are you still doing anything stunt related, or is it kind of full acro now?
Um. Well, how it the I think the biggest thing that transferred over was um the cheerleader mindset and attitude, right? So the thing that I noticed early on was culturally it was completely different, right? Again, I don't like using the word acro yoga, but like the early adopters of acro yoga, and this is just my opinion. It's probably a hot take, and I know that like when I've mentioned it to people, people, it's kind of ruffled a few feathers. The problem that I had recognized was, so you created this movement called acro yoga. Therefore, what you're saying is that in order to do acro, they have to have a yoga background, right?
Right.
You then alienate a significant portion of men because a lot of dudes weren't doing yoga, right?
Mm-mm.
And then the guys that were signing up for it that had a yoga background they weren't the most athletically gifted, they weren't the strongest, and so there was this leveling off of in terms of like the ability, the talent, a lot more um, fear was implemented because a lot of people weren't able to kind of execute the skills necessary. And so then here I come along, I have this cheer background, and we're like, spotter check, spotter, like, okay, cool, let's just go for this shit. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? As long as
Yeah.
Flyers 100% committed, I'm 100% committed. My spotters are committed. We're gonna go for it. And um, it didn't, there what I didn't feel a need to spend 5 months on doing progressionary steps, right?
Right.
Because of
Right.
my background in cheer, I had this feel of like, okay, the progressionary steps feel right in
Right.
order for me to take this to the next level. And um, a, a big part of my success was being able to work with flyers who also came from cheer, who also came from gymnastics, who weren't indoctrinated into the acro yoga way of doing things. And
Sure.
so that was a big help. And like whenever I can, give credit to like my success and where I'm at, that really starts with like the flyers who had the same type of cheer mentality that I
Yeah.
had in terms of the approach. That was
And
like the
two
biggest thing I noticed.
things on that. I think one, the stigma part that you talk about with the yoga, we see that, as in cheer too. You notice a lot of times people aren't calling it cheer anymore, they're calling it just all star, right? So it's
Oh,
it's
really?
it's
I
almost like,
didn't know that.
yeah. So in the I mean, it's rarely do you hear cheerleading. That's I feel like that term is really, aside from like sideline cheer, that term is kind of like on its way out. And I may be
Wow.
completely off
Wow.
base, but in the all star world, we have all star cheer and now all star dance, right? So you have like this style of, it's not studio dance. It's almost like if you took the dance portion out of an all star routine
Yeah.
and added a little bit lengthier to, a little bit more length to it, maybe some flips and things like that. So there's All Star Dance, but prior to that, it was almost like you didn't really hear All Star Cheerleading. It was kind of like All Star Cheer, and now it's just the vernacular that's used most often is just All Star. So like, yeah, I'm an all, what do you do? Like, we're at All Star. Like, it's so I feel like that stigma with the acro yoga and just calling it acro, and people are like, oh, like acrobatics. Like I could see how that kind of plays into it. And
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
point, another point you mentioned that hits home with me a lot too is I had the same cheer background. I show up and I don't I wanted to just see what it's about, right? So I show up at this jam, and they're like, okay, lay on your back, and I'm going through all these things. And unlike you, I don't really have the greatest hamstring flexibility, so I really struggled on the ground. And I
Yeah.
just kept saying, like, man, like if I could just stand up, I feel like it'd be so much easier. And they're like, yeah, but progression wise, this and that. And so finally, I got a girl that I trusted enough, and I'm like, look, don't like blast it out to the group, but I've I've been involved with cheer for like 17 years, and I'm much better on my feet. And she's like, really? And so like I just threw her up, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, how did you learn that? And so
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
within I'm teaching them standing skills. So I
Yeah.
I'm with you, and like that. The unfortunate part about San Antonio is we don't have a huge acro community, and the ones that typically go to the jams are ones that are very green, and do fall into the yoga side of it.
Yeah.
So I I do wish that there was a little bit more of that higher level around here. So kind of like to your point of feel like you're beyond that, but you don't want to just be like, yeah, I'm beyond this. I don't want to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, I've looked a, you know, from a so last year I you know I took on the challenge of wanting to take acro to the next level in terms of what are the things I can do to broaden it, to
Hmm.
broaden its appeal, right? From a business standpoint too, because
Sure.
it's this thing that I love that I think a whole bunch of other people would connect with, and you know, I knew someone who was an anthropologist, and I was just like, I have these kind of theories about why I think it's not growing. Um, kind of, help me out here and try to figure out like what are some of the things you see by being around, the community, and what they said. It kind of correlated to what a lot of beliefs that I had, but like it was really interesting in terms of like the cultural dynamic to it. And one of the things that I'm devoted to, especially going forward, is trying to implement some of these changes, some of these cultural attitudes in a way that I think that'll promote it for the masses. Because unfortunately, you know, acro, the early adopters of acro just happen to be really hippie, granola. Maybe I'll take a shower today. Maybe I won't. We're all going to Burning Man,
Oh,
you
for
know. And it really doesn't that doesn't really connect with the
a lot.
masses who I feel would really enjoy and really benefit from the practice.
For sure. So I know you said you got your projects that you're doing out in Hollywood, living that the Hollywood lifestyle kind of deal. But how much of acro, like how much of your day and your time and your efforts, and if it's not too personal, like even income, like comes from the acro world versus the world? Like where do the lines blur for you?
Yeah, I mean, usually, a typical day is, I'll go out, I'll audition on something, like it's like I have my regular job, right? Hollywood's like my
Mhm.
regular job, and
Yep.
then whenever I'm free, so like a typical day would be um, like, say we weren't in quarantine, right? I would have had a client today at like 3 p.m. Where, I would have made sure my audition was around 1 p.m. today. I'd study my lines. I'd take a change of clothes in the car. Then, we would meet somewhere out on the beach or wherever. I would do that. I would do that private lesson. The thing that was like the what was really fortunate is because my job pays like all my bills. Uh, I matured a little bit in terms of like my financial responsibilities and whatnot, and so
Sure.
I haven't I haven't spent any of my the money I make in Acro. That all just pretty much gets put away because I don't need it.
That's
So
great.
um
That's great.
yeah, so it's kind of given me this. Here's this thing. It's like I love to do. I would do for free, and then people are paying me to teach them in order to
Wow.
uh, in order to learn, and I don't have to live off of it. And so it's been a really cool blessing. You know, uh, shit. I don't know if you're excuse my curse. uh,
All
um,
good, man.
yeah, right. Know real estate in LA is ridiculous, and so yeah, man, this is going to that down payment on the house. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Do you have any projects coming up that we can look out for?
Um,
Like film and TV wise? Anything
no,
that's I guess anything post
everything's
production
been.
waiting for
What, I'm
I
sorry,
was just
say
saying
that
anything
again.
like post production that we're just waiting for release, or you got stuff like that you're auditioning for currently?
No, nothing. I mean, right now everything's been put on hold. I There was a project that I've been kind of shopping around, and one of an ex director. I wanted to attach a female to this project because it really needs a female's point of view. It's a story idea that I kind of came up with.
Okay,
That's relatively in this world,
sure.
and because of and sh I got her finally attached. So I'm really excited in terms of like being able to flush that out and being able to see where that goes.
Cool, man. I have to look up some of your projects, see what's coming down the line. We'll tag some links and stuff for
Yeah, for
different things
sure,
that
sure,
you got
man.
there. Well, so where are you from originally?
From Dallas, Texas, originally. Yeah.
Okay, so you're not far from where I'm at in
No,
San
no,
Antonio.
man.
What I mean, tell I'm curious about because I lived in Nashville, right? So
Yeah,
in Nashville, singer songwriter, right? Everybody's singer songwriter, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
you meet to a point where you kind of get numb to it. You're like, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. Like, oh, yeah, I'm a singer songwriter. You're like, okay, cool. And then you
yeah.
actually meet somebody. It's like, yeah, I'm a singer songwriter. And then like when you hang out, they've got like platinum albums that they've written, and like you're just like, wait a second, like this is a successful.
Yeah,
so like I mean, you're such a down to earth dude. You're so easy to get along with. Like you and I met, and it was just like you'd feel like we'd known each other forever.
oh yeah,
And
thanks,
I'm just
man.
like, it's just I'm curious. Like, tell me about that time when you're like, you know what? I live in Dallas, which for me, it's not far. I think Dallas is just a couple hours north.
Yeah,
So just down to earth dude living in Dallas. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna go to LA, and the next thing you know, you're on Sister Sister, and you're like doing all like you're doing it. Like
yeah, yeah.
walk me through that journey of all that.
I mean, I've always, ever since like the sixth grade, I knew I've always wanted to act, right? And as soon as when I graduated high school, I was like, I'm gonna move to LA, and I literally had no idea what it was about. And it's funny because I remember when I first moved to LA, people were like, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And I'm like, "I'm an actor." And like, I remember people was like, "Oh yeah, what restaurant do you work at?" Right? And that was like,
I get the Hard Rock.
right? And I was like, "That's so rude." And I'm like, "But that's true. Like everybody, you know what I mean?" And so I was like, "All right, I'm not gonna say I'm an actor until I get my first job." And yeah, man, when you move out here, you realize like no one's from LA. No
Right.
one's from LA. They all moved here to pursue their dream, and acting or writing, directing, and it's it's a little overwhelming. It's a little you get humbled real quick because there's moments where you're like, okay, you really have to have a level of what's the word I'm looking for, like um
Grit.
grit and belief in yourself that you're gonna rise above the all this, right?
Right.
But as you go through that journey and you just meet, I think that one of the cool things is like when you meet all your friends, especially in the beginning, and you're all poor, and you know all your friends are talented, but you guys are all in the same boat, and then you slowly see everyone. Right, like Aaron Paul used to sneak me in. He used to be the ticket taker guy, at the movies, and we were
Yeah.
friends, and he'd always let me go into the movies free. Now, he's an Emmy Award winner, star on Breaking Bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, um, it's just really cool to see everybody just kind of blow up and go through the struggles together. Um and uh y- y- you know if you don't have what it takes, man, you're going back home. Like
You get
you
eat,
will.
get eaten up.
Yeah. And who gets caught up in the hype? 'Cause Hollywood, man, in terms of the parties, in terms of just everything you can get into. Like if you're not focused, it could, yeah, you're not going to survive that. You
Uh,
know.
when you look back at your career, what's the thing so far that you've been most proud of? Like your either the biggest project, or maybe not even the biggest project, like something that you just like it meant so much to you that like you feel like at this point in your career, that's like that's what your guy it continues to push you forward.
Yeah. I would. People ask me this all the time, and I would probably. It's weird because I've done series that have been on TV, and we've been canceled, or I, I've a lot. I've like the past couple of years. Trying not to sneeze. Now sneezing, especially in the day of the coronavirus, is like not a
How
good
do you?
thing.
That's the funniest thing is watching people on the news try to mask sneezes and coughs and like hold it in.
Yeah,
everybody's
bro.
everybody's terrified to cough.
But yeah, I would have to say can't hardly wait. For a couple of reasons. I grew up in the '80s. When I was and I was a big fan of all these teen movies, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman's, and just the impact like those teen movies had on me. So to be a part of a teen movie and it become this like cult classic where
Yeah,
to this day, people will stop me on the street and ask for like my autograph or a picture. Um, and it was like, okay, if I didn't do anything ever again, like I made my dream come true of being a part of a cult classic, that
sure.
really was a part of a lot of people's like lives and their upbringing. And so
People
that was
people still
what, say it
quote
again.
all the time. People still quote from that movie like
Oh
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. And so like that, I'm really proud of that. But I don't want to stop there. I mean, I've always wanted to be in front and behind the camera. I did
Okay,
kind of take some time off for a while, just to kind of figure out exactly how I want to maneuver
sure.
in the industry. But yeah, just can't hardly wait was just it was it was a game changer just in terms of the impact that I saw it have, and it definitely gave me a window into like what it is to be like ultra famous. And
That's
yeah.
cool. Very cool, man. I'm gonna put some links to some of your stuff, and then I'll probably put a few clips from some of your stuff.
All right, man.
Um, on the cheer and acro side, I mean, yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about. the quarantine and everything that's going on. And from what I can tell, I don't think we're supposed to say the name of it because then they like start blocking your video. So we'll just say quarantine. Yeah, supposedly YouTube demonetizes your video if you say the name of it or whatever it is. Yeah, so because they
No
transcript. Oh,
way.
there's there's some channels that I watch that like have hundreds of thousands and millions of subscribers, and when they talk about this thing, they never say the word of it. And I was like, why don't nobody saying the name of it? And I started looking up. YouTube is demonetizing those videos.
Wow.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. Well, hey, man. I mean, we would
I
jump off track, but in a way,
they're they're,
I kind of dig it.
they're trying
I
to
kind of.
they're trying to crack down on people. I mean, how hard, how easy would it be in this day to be like, put some clickbait headline of, you know, click here to learn the secret about how to actually blank 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 this blank,
Yeah.
and get 10 million views. So I get it. But given the time and like, this kind of works out for you in part, I feel, but then maybe not because of the distancing. But like, I know with Cheer, a lot of the gyms are doing virtual classes, they're doing virtual team meetings and things like that. As an acro practitioner, how do you stay in shape and continue to hone your craft given the circumstances? And also, like, what recommendations would you give for some of our athletes that are wondering, like, how do I work on body positions? How do I keep up my strength? How do I keep up my flexibility, my agility? What kind of thing could you recommend for them?
Well, it's it's a funny story. Uh, I, I yesterday I was like, man, I need to work out. I need to just gyms are closed. I went to Walmart to see if I can find a kettlebell, and everything is sold out. All the gym equipment is sold out. but as far as working out and staying in shape, it's the same type of protocol that you would if you're a cheerleader with acro. It's keeping loose, keeping the hamstrings flexible, doing
Hmm.
doing a bunch of stretches, keeping your core, doing core exercises. Excuse me. Um, yeah. As far as like online, I'm gonna start. Me and Trinity are gonna start next week doing online classes. Hopefully, maybe for just for beginners. Um, and to trying to walk them through just some beginning postures, because now a lot of people are at home, and unlike cheer, right, it's like, okay, I'm quarantined in my house. I'm not going to practice working on my toss to hands or whatever, but I can lay on my back and figure out how to get into this bird or thrown. And so I think that's a really good way to be able to take the advantage of wanting to learn basics,
Right.
during this. So it's just learning how, making sure people, once they do attempt it, making sure the lines are in the right place, stacking your feet over your hips, etc. That type of thing.
I think it's a great time, now that we, a lot of the kids and a lot of the athletes, I mean, people in general, are kind of everything's mobile now, right? I mean, everything's Zoom. I bet Zoom stock is going through the roof,
Oh yeah.
but I think now's a perfect time for athletes to start to look into and study some of the videos of some of the stuff that you do, some of these other practitioners that you work with. I mean, I think that's one suggestion I would make is just for people that are interested, just take time to like comb through some of your social media, and just look up technique because I know again it's especially the ground based stuff is so foreign to a lot of people. I know it is for
Yeah.
me, but I think that I mean I'll definitely put try to put some links up to some of your stuff, and then do you have any resources? Do you think just if just Googling or YouTube acro, are there any particular resources that you like to look to for inspiration or things like that we can kind of push to
No,
the
I mean,
kids?
well, me personally, I mean, because acro is so like kind of new, it's still kind of scattered all over the place. And one of the things that I hope to do is just have a go-to resource, page of all the kind of the beginning, um, steps, right? And so
Hmm.
I'm not to say I'm obviously happy, but I, I'm I'm I want to take this time right now, however long we are in this circumstance, to be able to, and I'm not going to sneeze.
I see you fighting it,
Right, man. During the allergy season, it's just the worst. Uh,
dude.
um,
Man,
y-
you're from Texas. You know how it is here. You know how bad,
oh
man.
man, I lived off of Benadryl, like that was my bruh. Um, but being able to use this time, this downtime, so to speak, to be able to just build a website and just collectively get everything into place. So when we do get out of this, uh, there's a resource that more people can go to. But while we're in this, yeah, I think the best thing to do right now is just see what you can find on YouTube. My page has a bunch of my stuff is a lot more advanced, but I know people pick apart a lot of the videos and try to do the things that they feel that are easy or accessible. So
Sure. Well,
that'd be
maybe
a
inspire them
recommendation.
too, man. And that's it's one thing I talked to. We were at Winterfest talking to some of like Chris and Colin and Lou and some of those guys about um, having social media nowadays. You look at back when you and I were cheering. You only push the envelope so far because you didn't realize what's possible, right? You'd wait till
Exactly.
competition. You would go and see a guy or a team do something, and you're like, oh, I can do that. Then you go work on it all year, and you show back up, and then you're doing that, but then they're doing something new, so you're like, okay, let me do that now. And so now, skills that people would only see evolve once a year or every couple of months. Social media, like these kids will post, I just made up this brand new skill, and then 2 weeks later, 25 other people have done it.
Everybody's yeah, yeah.
So I think looking to a page like yours that has some of these more advanced skills, to your point of your goal of really pushing out this, less yoga, more acrobatics based form of acro. I think people looking at your stuff may be, kind of that catalyst to say, look what's done now and look what's
Oh yeah,
possible.
I've definitely noticed that exponential growth. I've definitely noticed that. Um, uh, I remember when I first started my page, the number of people around the world that were doing like carrying and popping, and this is outside of like the actual circus
Sure.
professionals that were just doing insane amounts of right. Um, when I started, like like I know a lot of people like credit Lou, right, for
Mhm.
being one of the first to like merge the two worlds, right, in the early 2000s of doing, of implementing a lot more acro with the cheer, right, and so
Mhm.
now it's just part of. And so I remember when I first started my page, not a lot of people were doing Icarian stuff. And then when I would debut it on my page, um, more and more videos would start to pop up. These WAPs, these whip pops would start to pop up more. Now there's a lot more people. A lot of people are way more advanced than me because they only specialize in that one thing. And yeah, I've been able to see it firsthand, the growth because of social media, as
Mhm.
opposed to like, okay, like if social media didn't exist and I was just doing this at, you know, the beach by myself, there's no telling where a lot of those practitioners would be. So yeah, um, social media, wow. The thing that I'm excited about is if I can get, especially cheerleaders, bases to L base more, I
Mhm.
guarantee you, where I am right now, those kids would be better and beyond me in a year if they were to dedicate to it because they have all the ability, all the mechanics, all the mental will in order to be able to perform in ways that I couldn't in a year's time, guaranteed for
Yeah.
sure.
And I'm interested to see too, kind of in that same vein, the the reciprocal. I excited to see more of acro get plugged into like all-star cheer routines, right? More that
Yeah, yeah,
artistic kind of flowing transition because everything is still so, when it comes down to like brass tacks, it's still do it to an 8 count. You know what I mean? So like it's hard to blur that line because you can only do so many and a 1 and a 2 and a 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8 and a 1 and a 2. It's always everything has to be on a count, but with acro, it's so much easier to just kind of flow.
but
You can change tempos in and out and things like that. I mean, I'm sure there's a choreography component to acro,
there
but I
totally
feel
is. You
like
totally could do it. Yeah,
I
you
feel
totally could
like
do it.
I think you could. There's a way to blend them to where they could work out in a group setting and still have the flowy artistry of acro with the regimented forms of cheer.
Yeah,
I don't. That's something the acro side I don't have enough experience in it to give an opinion on how, but I mean surely there's a way that we can
yeah,
start to
there
merge some.
totally is. There totally is. I believe there is. Yeah.
There was the couple that came to Winterfest that were from Cirque, and the class that they did where they were showing some of those flowy transitions with co-ed stunts, and that was really cool. So
Yeah, yeah, Max and Erica. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. No, there totally is. Somebody, I mean, it's inevitable. It's inevitable because like what you said, um, the need to push the envelope because everybody can YouTube everybody's performance and see what they did and to see how they could just be different. I think it's only a matter of time before a team says, okay, for this 8 count, everybody's going to lay on their back and we're going to do this really cool 4-step thing, or we're going to do a front tuck flip, or so it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter.
sure, sure. And I think that there's hints of it in just with transitions right now. There's hints of stuff like that. You see people will do like like a chasse and then like a front aerial, but they'll be braced by people. You see like people will do like a base will drop down to their hands and knees, and somebody will step off their back and they'll kind of do an aerial, a braced aerial off of it. So it's like people are hinting at it, but nobody's pulled the trigger and just said, okay, like we're gonna make, like you said, this 8 count, this 4 8 counts, this entire transition group wise, or even like partner stunt wise, like somebody like a Colin or a Chris, some of those guys to say, okay, during this 12 seconds of our partner stunt routine, we're just gonna be like fluid. We're not gonna pop off. We're not gonna
Yeah,
flip. It's just gonna be fluid motion, and then maybe jump back in. So I'm intrigued to see what the next 5 to 10 years, because you can only do so many. You can only skill wise, you can only get so hard before you start to kind of reach the barrier of human ability. Nobody's going to do a quadruple up. No, in a competition, nobody's going to do a. Also rules wise, nobody's going to
yeah,
do a
yeah,
double back. Because you're limited by either your rules or you're limited by just current human physical ability. So where do you innovate? And it's, I feel like, the in between, which is really where your practice comes in, is that how do we seam it? How do we smooth out the lines? How do we break the choppiness and make it, how do we go from script to cursive, kind of thing.
yeah.
I don't know.
Script
That's,
to cursive.
that's
I like that. I like that.
Well, man, I don't want to take any more of your time, but I'm really glad I got to chat with you, man. I know it's been forever, and obviously the blessing of the current situation is it really allows us to kind of use social media and use these tools to connect, and I'm really glad I got to get on with you and introduce you to our small band of followers, and hopefully try to inspire maybe some young athletes to look into acro while they have all the time in the world to do so.
I know. Well, man, and thank you again for having me, man. Cheer's been in my blood. Um, uh, so to the idea that you would actually want to reach out and promote this to your audience, it means a lot to me because um in the acro world, I'm definitely like that. I'm the one guy in the community that comes from the world, so I'm kind of foreign, right? And slowly but surely, I'm my way of doing things is kind of permeating, within the community. Like, oh wow, okay, like I can see how this cheer approach benefits us. And so, the fact that like I was able to make an impression on you to where you wanted to reach out to me means a lot to me. So, man, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Of course, man. Of course. Well, I'll put links to all of your stuff in the description on our podcast, and once all this stuff gets cleared up, man, if you got a couch for me to crash on, I'll come out to LA. I've never been to LA, so come
Sounds
visit.
good, brother. Sounds good.
Hit up the beach.
Yeah, man. Especially when, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I have you out there. And listen, everybody loves when a cheerleader comes out there because we have all these amazing, athletically gifted like flyers that just want to be thrown in the air, and they're very coachable. And so excuse me, an all-star, is that so? That's the new term. I
So
like
there's
that.
All Star Cheer, yeah, All Star Cheer and All Star Dance is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
competitive side. So
Okay.
and like I said, the dance is relatively new, so it's taken off, man. If you haven't looked into All Star Dance, it's so at Worlds you'll have All Star Worlds, Cheer
Yeah,
Worlds,
an
and you have
all-star.
All Star
I mean, I've
All Star
always
Dance.
remembered the all-star. I've always remembered the dance being around, but in terms of like, what would I call you as an individual? Like a stunner, a cheerleader,
So
like what?
cheer cheer athlete is kind of
Yeah,
cheer
a
athlete,
cheer.
yeah.
Yeah,
Because again, that whole idea of cheerleading, you're leading sideline, you're leading the crowd with some sort of, if you get down to like,
true.
the the nuts and bolts of it, right? Your sideline is still cheerleading. You're leading cheers for a crowd versus all star. You're not really leading. You're not supporting another team. You're just putting on a performance. So you take
Yeah,
out the leading. Or I guess it's all semantics.
yeah. I mean, listen, this is probably off topic. You probably have already had a conversation or a podcast about it. Like, there are elements of Cheer that I liked, and then there are elements of Cheer on Netflix that I didn't like. And I hope they address those elements with a new team and a new season. And I don't know if they feel like Navarro is the cream of the crop either. I don't know if they feel like Cheer is what made it successful or Navarro made it successful. And if we go to, say, Kentucky and actually show, men, you know what I mean? Like the dynamic, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I did an episode on Cheer. I focused a lot more on the thing that I thought the show was very well made. As far as like just from a creation standpoint, I don't like that the underlying foundation of everything was injuries. Every episode just was injury laden, and you know, the problem I've always had is our sport tries to validate our athleticism by how injured we get. It's like, oh man, look how serious she got hurt. Like she was tough. Like she must be a real athlete. And no other sport does that. Like you don't hear football players like, oh, I got 6 concussions last season, man. I'm so tough. Like look how tough I am.
that's a
And
good
so
point.
so we just try to. Unfortunately, a lot of times our athletes try to validate our status as a sport and validate their status as athletes by showing like, yeah, we get really hurt. And that to me, like, that's one thing I didn't like because I know number one, they took a lot of artistic freedom with like highlighting the fact that there was injuries, but there's injuries in every sport. So we don't need to it doesn't need to be the central theme of everything. And then the other thing that, is if you're gonna highlight the injuries, highlight and be unbiased about it. Like the way it was presented, at least from my point of view, was if I were a parent and my kid came to me and said, "I watched this show and I want to do cheer," and I knew nothing about it, and then I went and watched this show to get my first glimpse of what it's like, what I'm going to come out of that show is saying, "Okay, my kid is going to go do this ridiculously crazy sport that they're likely going to get very hurt doing and have minimal health care to keep them in it."
Yeah, yeah,
And that to me, like that was very frustrating. I think that getting Cheer into the public's eye, I mean, at the time it was the number one stream show in Netflix history, so like it got exposure really, really good, which I think was great for the sport. I was very interested to see what season 2 was going to show. Um, it was, I got to meet with some of the guys from Navarro a couple of weeks back, and he said there was no. It's like it's not a secret. We were filming season 2, um, and it's just because of everything that's happened, and they shut the school down for quarantine. They had to stop filming, but I mean they were in the middle of season 2, so to me, I was interested to see if they were going to get into more of what viewpoint were they going to take in the production and what they portrayed to the public. Was it going to be more of the same? Where like, yeah, look how much more hurt they got, or were they actually going to try to take a different viewpoint?
Oh, so season 2 is with them again.
So yeah, so they were filming it, and I said, I was like, "Is that a secret? Should that not be out?" And he said, "No." He said, they were having stunt clinics and stunt camps, and if you went to one of their clinics, like they were there filming the whole time. They weren't trying to be secretive about it. So I mean, they weren't broadcasting it to the public, but then if, like I said, if you went to one of their clinics, then you saw a film crew there, and so it wasn't hard to put two and two together.
Yeah.
So, but I guess we'll see. So,
All right.
well, man,
You
it was
see
good
who
talking
Victor
to you.
on.
Good catching up. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I'll be in touch, and I want to thank you again for taking time to hop on with me and give us some insight into your world.
Cool, man. Thank you. Thank you again for having me, man.
Of course, we'll talk soon.
All right. Later, bro.